Hello everyone, igama lami Sandile Mkhize. I am a young man of 30-year-old young man, and I'm a Zulu man, born and raised, in fact born in Durban, left Durban in 2004, came up to Joburg. I'll tell you more about it. Yeah, so I do cinematography. I studied cinematography, TV operations and film operations. Yeah, so, and I do production there and there. I'm an actor, you know. Right, so like I said, I was born in Durban, left in 2004, and I was 14. Why I left, it was because of the tragic incident that happened, whereby, so I'm just gonna tell you what led to the passing of my dad and my mother. So what happened was, a few years prior to 2004, because that's when the incident happened, which I'll tell you how and everything unfolded, right? So what happened was, from the times I was growing up, still a child, so I come from a family of 6, including my parents, and I'm the last born, and my 3 siblings. One is late, which was my sister, and then I'm left with 2 brothers, and one is my half brother, who was the oldest of the family, right? And from the time we were growing up, there was flashbacks from now, because things started making sense when I was growing up, but from I started having flashbacks, just piecing everything together, the puzzle, so the older brother, who is my half brother, used to molest my sister, used to sleep with her and do all sorts of things, because he was he was the son to my mother, and he was a stepson to my dad, all right? But my dad took him in and raised him up as his own. But then there was incidences where he would be caught, molesting my sister, sleeping with her, and my dad would be furious. He would be angry at that. He would confront my mother, and what my mother did, she would always, defend him, almost stand for him, and almost talk my dad out of whatever that he would want to do, right? And it went in for years. It happened for years, right? My sister was, at the time, because she's at 87, I think, at the time 2003, I think she was 17, 16. Yeah, I think she was 15, 16, 2003, but the molestation happened prior to that. It happened for years, right? And it built up, right? And my half brother, who was the oldest, I'm sure he was on his early 20s at the time, because he's a 1980, right? So right, the moment came that when my dad was like, you know what, I want to kill him now, because like this is not stopping. And my mom spoke for him, or spoke on his behalf, and defended him throughout, and which they came to a final agreement that, okay, let's bring, my dad suggested that he gets locked up and he gets a prison sentence, and that was the final decision. And then police came and he was arrested, but then again, my mother conspired with her family, her side of the family, because the guy would leave to visit his own family at sometimes, so they conspired all together to take him out of prison. So I hear that there was missing documents, and the sentence didn't happen, right? And when he came out, he phoned my house and they wanted to speak to my dad, and he was cursing at him, saying all disrespectful things. And my dad got very furious, and found out the whole story, what unfolded and how he got out, right? And which almost sums up the incident, why he made the final decision of taking his life and my mother's life. So what happened in 2004, March 17, it was on a Wednesday. It was just myself and my parents in the house, and we were watching wrestling. We used to love wrestling, and right after that, I went to outside the cottage where I used to sleep, right? And they slept in the main house. Right when I was just preparing my bed, you know, I heard one scream, which my mother was the loudest scream I've ever heard, my mother. And it was like one scream, right, the longest one, right? And it was followed by gunshots, 5 gunshots, and it was pop, 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 and it was just silence, complete silence there after that. And I was just out there thinking, what just happened, you see? And quickly got out and I went to check what just happened. You know, I just tried to open the door and the door was locked and all the windows were locked, and I took a piece of brick and I broke one window and I removed the curtains, and all I saw was just blood everywhere and both of them sleeping on the floor. And yeah, it was done, that was it. And I panicked, and but I tried to remain calm, because now, you know, I don't know how I was feeling. I can't really tell the emotion I had at the moment, but I was still conscious, and I was like, you know what, let me just go like visit my go run to my mother's friend who was in the neighborhood to break the news to her. And I ran there quickly, and she came out and she called the cops, and everything was and my mother was, from the time I you know, that very same night, they took me to my cottage, right? And I was listening to whatever was happening outside, so I hear that he gave my mother 5 bullets and he gave himself 1 bullet on the head, right? And from when I kept listening, I could hear my mother, you know, like they said that she was still alive, right? And I could just assume that she was really trying to fight for her life, you know, because I mean, she was just thinking, I've got kids, and you know, what an unfair thing that just happened to her. And you know, I assume she was still fighting for her life, because they told me that she passed away early in the morning, I think around about 2. So, which tells you that she was really, you know, trying to fight, right? And then that happened, and then now I'm left there, you know, thinking, wow, you know, he spared me, because, you know, he didn't kill me. It was just myself and him and my mother. I was grateful that he spared me, and then now I'm like, okay, what's next, you know? I was a soccer player then. I was very good in soccer, very intelligent at school, doing really well. My house was full of my medals and all my certificates. I was a brilliant kid. I don't know what happened, but yeah. So now I was like, okay, what's next? So the next thing was, because I'm a guy that really loves soccer and was doing really well in soccer, I was like, you know what, let me go to Joburg, because at the time I was at school but waiting for my dad to fix the monies for me to come to Joburg to play soccer and just study and stuff. So after that happened, I was like, you know what, I don't care if there's money or not, I'm going to try and hustle money, and I'm going to go to Joburg. And in Joburg, I decided that, and indeed, I got the money. I booked the bus, I booked everything, I took everything, and I left, right? And I didn't know anyone in Joburg. I just left as young as I was. And I came up and I went to Park Station, and I just stood there, arrived in the morning, and I waited for, I didn't know where to go, but I don't know how this happened. I saw one guy that I knew from Durban, and I asked him, I'm like, hey, I just landed, bro, what's going on? I'm looking for a coach, such and such a name. And he's like, oh, I know where she is. And I was like, oh, great. And then he took me to that coach, and I stayed in some dungeon in a very terrible place, and I was started going to school, started playing soccer. You know, I didn't have a support system. I didn't have anyone sending me money from anywhere. You know, the guys that I was staying with, they were privileged because they had their people, parents whatsoever, that were sending them money, so they used to make a living. Now I was just, you know, borrowing everything. It was me just borrowing shirts, shoes, food and everything, and I was caught up stealing food in bakeries, supermarkets down in downtown in Joburg. 2010 I went to put myself in tertiary, studied, but it didn't go well. You know, there was funding, there was everything was complications, and then I didn't have a place to stay. It was just difficult, you know. Ended up not completing my program. And I had to start working now because I had to make means to feed myself, you know. And that's when I started making really stupid decisions and having to encounter with wrong friends and making wrong friends and ending up in doing drugs and everything. You know, that was the age of my life where I really was crying for help, but I didn't know that I was crying for help. Right? I wanted a rescue, and the only thing that was, you know, the only thing that was practical, the only thing that I could do is to get into substances, you know, having to find comfort in substances and wrong friends and girls and everything like that, you know. Because there comes a time where whatever that you aspire for, there comes a time when you grow up, you make stupid decisions, you know. It's part of growth, right? And then now, you know, just growing up, working, doing all these things, and yeah, that was my toughest moment of my life, you see, because now, when I was growing up, I think it was 2015, where I found someone that took me to church one time. I remember I had to go work, and I was fed up with work, and I was just like, you know what, let me resign and go back to soccer, because this working 9 to 5 is not really working for me. Right, and that's when I encountered someone that invited me to church. And how that happened, she was someone that was working for Clive Barker at the time when Clive Barker was coaching Black Aces. You know, she took me to she actually asked me to come through, and I asked her to talk me up with some trials, because I wanted to go back to soccer and everything. She you know, hooked up the trials for me, but then it didn't go well still. Yeah, I started going to this church, which they prayed the whole night on Fridays, and it was crazy. They had Wednesday Bible study, and it was crazy, and I didn't know God at all at the time, you know. That's when I started being saved. You know, I got saved, I accepted Christ in my life, you know. And things started changing, you know, because when I was growing up, my dad once said, you know, when I die, I don't want anyone to cry, you know. And so I never used to be a crier, you know. But then when I started going to church, I used to cry a lot. I used to sob and break down, and just like, it wasn't comfortable. Yeah, but that's when everything started making sense for me, that, you know, when God had predestined you for greatness, whatever that you have gone through is almost evident to where you are going, right? Because I realized that, you know, I'm in between where I'm from and where I'm going, and I realized that space, it's a very uncomfortable place. It's the most challenging place. There's a lot of uncertainties and a lot of confusions and stuff, because I was suffering a lot from identity. There was a lot of identity crisis that was happening there. You know, I was thirsty, but I didn't know what I was thirsty for. I was hungry, but I didn't know what I was hungry for. You know, I wanted fulfillment. I wanted sort of like belonging. I wanted to belong somewhere, but I didn't get that. Hence, I was hopping around, staying in different places and doing drugs and everything, right? And so having to realize that, you know, God has taken me from where my parents passed, you know, which I never understood why he would take my parents away at a very young age, the way they did. You know, I never understood why my dad would decide to take his life and take my mom's life. And what would happen to me, you know, I never understood that. I always asked, but why, right? And things started just opening up, you know, that, listen, God is taking me somewhere where I do not know where, but it's indeed somewhere that I need to be. And trust me, I'm working through that by His grace, you know, because as I said, it's that moment of crushing, and it's a moment of finding who you really are, truthfully, because you know, Ephesians 1:5 says that he predestined us for sonship, in calling us to be His own, you know. You know, me being an orphan, growing up and not knowing who I am, and my identity crisis and where I belong, indeed, when that scripture speaks to my core, my spirit, because now it speaks of adoption, Him being the father figure, the mother figure that I always wanted, Him being the one that quenches my thirst, that the thing that I was trying to quench, this thirst that has been inside of me, He's the one that quenches that thirst. He is the one that fills that hunger from the inside of me, from my spirit, you know. And I would cry a lot, saying, God, please heal me, you know, heal me from the inside of me, because I didn't know that I needed a bit of healing. In fact, I needed a deep healing from the inside of me. Because there was a lot that was broken from the inside, and God reached, you know, and reached to that part where I needed a touch of it with His hand, you know. By grace, I'm the man that I am today because of God. Indeed reached out to me. He called me. He never left me nor forsaken me, you know. All seemed impossible, you see. It seemed like I was never going to come out of my situation, you know, because I didn't have parents, man, and it's hard to grow up not having parents. And I see young men out there on the street, you know, and I would ask them, like, why did you leave home? And they would tell me they weren't getting along with such and such in the family, and they left home, you know. And it kind of makes me sad, you know, the main reason why they left home, you know, because I would advise them to really go back home and fix whatever that was broken, because they still have a foundation, you know. It's a different situation when you don't have a foundation, when you don't have a home to go back to, and all you know is just to survive. I was living a life of survival, you know, but God has been there. And I just want to say to young men who are out there, you know, who are on the streets, or who are struggling with a lot of confusion, people who are doing drugs and finding fulfillment and in substances and all of it. Listen, it's not worth it. All right, I'm sorry to say, it's not worth it. You know, I really think that you should look deeper from the inside of you, what really fulfills you, because it's not substances. Substances, it's a temporary fix. It won't take you nowhere. In fact, it even damages your body. You become a walking zombie. That's really true. My last words is believe in yourself and trust God, and try to know God, and not just know about Him, know of Him, and have a relationship with Him. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. Yeah. Hello everybody, my name is Sandile Mkhize, and I have been through the most.